Hi, my name is Lale, and I'm an Associate Professor of History at the City College of New York in CUNY Graduate Center, where I teach Ottoman and Middle Eastern history. I'm excited to join the cohort at the Koç University Center for Anatolian Civilizations this fall as a senior fellow and to work on my new book project, tentatively titled Empire of Exile: Mapping Sedition, Sürgün, and Transformation in Ottoman History. I'm deeply appreciative of ANAMED's support for this project and excited to tell you a little bit about it. As an Ottoman historian, I'm especially interested in themes related to migration, mobility, imperial belonging, and law. While framed by big questions about empire, sovereignty, and religious and political authority, my research is rooted in sustained attention to histories of ordinary people, networks, spaces, and practices. This approach informed my first book, Spiritual Subjects: Central Asian Pilgrims and the Ottoman Hajj at the End of Empire, which came out from Stanford University Press in March 2020. Spiritual Subjects is a study of global Hajj and Ottoman nationality reform that moves between the experiences of ordinary people and their interactions with Ottoman state and society to show how the roads to Mecca paved the way for Central Asian pilgrims to become Ottoman subjects and later citizens of the Turkish Republic. Now, if Spiritual Subjects explored how Muslims from abroad became Ottomans through Hajj-related mobility, my new project takes up the question of what it meant to be Ottoman from a different angle, that of subjects of the Sultan who were punished for committing crimes that ran the gamut from prostitution and corruption to political dissent, and who were cast out of society through internal exile. By reconstructing histories of people who were accused of crimes against their communities and the state, and then punished through forced relocation, I hope to weave together the social and political histories of banishment to help us better understand imperial belonging and conceptions of territoriality. Working with a range of legal, administrative, and literary sources, this project will consider the exercise and limits of authority and state violence, the notion of a collective that traitors or dissidents were perceived as acting against, and the emergence of an idea of an imperial homeland. In essence, Empire of Exile asks what it meant to be Ottoman by examining how people accused of threatening the social and political order were cast out of society. To this end, over the next few months, I'll work with sources that include petitions for clemency and relocation from people in exile, or sürgün, as well as from their families, and sources like police reports and provincial records related to sedition and undesirable or troublesome subjects. This will build on work that I began to undertake under the auspices of a National Endowment for the Humanities Fellowship. Next, I plan to work with imperial edicts and legal codes related to legal definitions of treason and punishment, and sources such as petitions and memoirs to understand the impact of banishment on those exiled to the empire's continually evolving margins. Despite the prevalence of treason and exile in Ottoman history, both are surprisingly understudied. For many Ottoman historians, Sürgün calls to mind prominent intellectuals like Namık Kemal, who was exiled and fled to Paris, or statesmen like the reformist Grand Vizier Mithat Pasha, who was sent to Taif, an Arabian city where he died in 1883 under mysterious circumstances. Sürgün is also commonly associated with high crimes like treason and permanent expatriation, but in practice it was often the punishment for much less serious crimes committed by a range of people, and it could often range from anywhere from a couple of months to several years. Histories of exile are often narrated through the biographies of individuals rather than investigated as part and parcel of the mobility, voluntary and forced, that was integral to Ottoman history from its earliest days. One of the big questions I ask is whether treason was a crime against the Sultan, the dynasty, or religion. How did the state determine where people would be sent, or for how long? What do these geographies tell us about imperial transformation and the place of exile within various imperial imaginaries? While the Ottoman Empire never had the equivalent of Siberia, internal exile to different parts of the Sultan's realms was a defining feature of Ottoman rule and life. A second goal of my project is to tell a bigger story about the empire's evolution by tracing and then mapping the geography of exile, particularly sites of banishment in relation to the empire's expansion, contraction, and transformation. This will be crucial to reconstructing the central government's conceptions of imperial space, specifically how understandings of center and periphery evolved, and how changing notions of distance and isolation influenced where people were sent, ranging from sites in Anatolia, the Balkans, the Arab lands, and Mediterranean islands like Rhodes and Crete. I asked, for example, if Fezzan, a city in Libya that still conjures the notion of distance in contemporary Turkey, was always considered far, Or was distance linked to imagined cultural or quote-unquote civilizational proximity to Istanbul rather than geographic expanses that could be measured in kilometers? These questions give me a lot to work with and will yield important new insights into Ottoman history that I'm eager to research and write about. Again, I thank the Koç University Center for Anatolian Civilizations for supporting my research, and thank you all for listening to this introduction.